Okay, this is the part where I answer your questions. All right, these questions are from Denise. Her questions are about chaptering, about run-on chapters, how long or short should the chapters be, how to group the thoughts or the adventures for a chapter, how about the names or the titles for a chapter, and so lots of questions about chapters and then some concern about the writing. So the most important thing is to just befriend the messy first draft. That is so difficult for writers, even experienced writers, but especially your first book, deities. It's difficult to embrace that the only way to get the first draft done is just to make peace with it. So don't edit, don't concern yourself with anything, with rewriting, with researching, with polishing, with how long the chapter should be, or even with sequence, but just write as you have been doing and keep on writing. I see that you're writing longhand, which is great. I love to do that. It seems to be more connected to the spirit, and then naturally when you type it, it will refine it and edit it. So I like the clustering technique, which I shared in a different video. I'll put a link to that clustering in the description for this video for you. In order to organize the thoughts so that you have various clusters. You're basically working on an autobiography that may work for your autobiography, or it may be that you've got several books that you're working on, or it may be that chronological will serve you best. So there are many things to consider. Here's what I would like to say. Most important, biggest thing I can say is just get the first draft done. Whatever's alive in you, write those things down. And then once you see what you've gotten, you will have many more opportunities to shift it. However, I will also add this. So my first published book, From Heartbreak to Happiness, is an autobiography. Might be a little bit similar to where you're going. So I'm going to walk through several books as examples, how long the chapters are, how they were organized in the writing, and how they were organized at the end. We don't want to be doing the editing now, but it is a reasonable question to ask, how to basically organize your thoughts. So with this book, as I believe I've mentioned, but for the benefit of being thorough for this video, for other people who will also have the same question about chapters, I just thought about, in the process of going from heartbreak to happiness, what were the turning points? What were the things where I had a quantum leap forward in my own happiness? And then I divided it into 5 sections, not really chapters, but 5 sections, 5 long chapters you could call them, that represented each one an equal amount of work. So my book, From Heartbreak to Happiness, an Intimate Diary of Healing, would have been 10,000 pages long if it had been all of the pages of my journal. So the first year is the first 4 sections, and then the last 10 years of healing is in the last chapter. So because I had this idea that I wanted each section to represent equal amounts of healing. I'd have to look at it exactly now, but I think, the first, it's reverse organized with chronological. So the first section is the least amount of time. The second section is the second least amount of time, and so on, because each represented similar amounts of work or of grieving or the work of healing. And then there was a turning point, and then that went to the next chapter. So in this book, for example, I decided in advance as a screenwriter, screenplays are 3 acts, but they can be divided into 5 acts. So I use that structure, and the sections are called tragedy, transformation, trials, temptations, triumph, because I like alliteration. So not very long titles for the chapters or the sections, if you like. But then I'm sure you've read this book. Each one is just a diary entry on its own page. And they're basically just drawn from my diary. So in most cases, the headings were already there, but in some cases I had to add them. So for example, I think this was the heading. First Christmas Without Him, I think, was the heading. Anyway, I tidied it up and tightened it And there was a lot that didn't make it into the book. Otherwise, it would have been very, very long. So there were some creative choices with this book, which was around the voice. I didn't want to break the voice. You might want to consider that for your own book as well. Like, when do you have the voice of you today reflecting on your life? And when do you want to have the voice of you at the time of the experience? So that is a choice to make. You don't necessarily have to make it now, but you will definitely have to make it when you do the first edit. As I said, to begin with, who is your reader? When you've decided who the reader is, then it will help to make that choice. So Grief Relief in 30 Minutes is written from the perspective of Aurora when she was writing it, and there are some excerpts from this, but I'm not disguising that the tone of voice is from a person who's already through the grief. With the diary, I wanted the present voice, so that created the problem of how to comment on what was happening at that time with my voice from today, or my wisdom or insight from later when I was editing the book. You may also confront this challenge/opportunity. So how I solved that is by having little quotes at the end of each diary entry that were not from me, because that would interrupt the voice, but were from other places. So for example, here the quote is, well, this is kind of weird. So the diary entry is not grounded, and I share about this, the doors don't open for me at the airport. The scale says I weigh 98.5 pounds, and I feel like I don't have any life force. I feel like I could float off, and something strange is happening. Some doorway has been opened. This is not normal. That's the last sentence in the diary. And then I comment on that with a quote from Viktor Frankl, who says, an abnormal reaction to an abnormal situation is normal behavior. Okay, so you may be confronting some of those questions or some of those decisions with your book, but we really wouldn't worry about it too much until you get the first draft done. So you've got 45 handwritten pages now. Great, keep up the good work. As another example of chapters with Grief Relief in 30 Minutes, I knew I was primarily going to be explaining the peace method, how to go from heartbreak to happiness using the peace method. So that naturally created 5 chapters. One around P for present moment, E, express your feelings, A, allow, accept, and appreciate, C, consider the contrary, and E, enthusiasm or engage. And then I had obviously an introduction, and then at the back of the book there are some transcripts. So that was the organization that I chose for that book. A couple more examples that will help clarify this. I write the introduction of the book. I write the final chapter as almost the final thing I write, and then I write the introduction after I write the final chapter, and then I write the back of the book. And then we settle on the title. So this book, which is the most recent book, Thought Leader Launch, 7 Ways to Make 7 Figures with Your $1 Million Message. It started off when I was writing it. The first draft was called Your Book, Your Brand, Your Business. So it had that idea. I completely changed the title. And so what I did, and I reorganized it several times, but let's see, how is this book organized? Oh yeah, now I remember. I have 5 videos that talk about your $1 million message that were nicely shot and edited. So the backbone of this book was the transcript of those 5 videos. So the videos were about your $1 million message, your brand, your spotlight, your business, and the transformation economy. Those were the initial chapter headings, were related to the video headings. But then as I worked on the book and did the second and third and fourth drafts, I revised it. So the first draft, there's a lot of editing and polishing and thinking things through and changing the sequence. But I like things that are like more bite-sized. So if you look at the table of contents here, You know, you see that there's a lot of detail in the table of contents. I like things that are like that, and so you can do that as well. So, for example, and underneath your spotlight is a chapter. Oh, there's about 10 chapters, 9 or 10 chapters. Let's see. There's 10 chapters. So the chapters are your opportunity, your $1 million message, your brand, your spotlight, your business, your $1 million book, your launch, your coach, your purpose, and your turn. Again, I'm having fun with words, right? I like the your in front of each one. So then I had to just put things that made sense in that. So under your spotlight, you know, you're not in the business you think you're in, you're actually in show business. That's directly from the video. But then I had to decide where I was going to put this bit about neuroscience, because I could have put that several places. I decided to put that in this chapter. So I've got the heading, neuroscience. I just shift my topic. I don't worry too much about the transition from the 64-4 rule. And then I talk about neuroscience, and then I have a subheading within that neuroscience talking about the croc brain and the midbrain and the neocortex. So, you know, you can transition from one topic to another simply with a heading or simply a new chapter. So, and you want the chapter headings to describe what the general kind of content is. It depends if you end up staying with the chronological approach, which may be the best for your book. It might not be. You might do what Mark Nepo did. His book is not in chronological order. 7,000 Ways to Listen doesn't appear to be. It's more clustered by his topics. So looking at his book, which does have a lot of his story in it, and I know you've got this book already, or if you haven't got it, if you're not Denise and you're watching this, then, you know, I recommend this. So he has got, he separated his book into 3 sections: the work of being human, and the work of love. And so he put his stories in whichever section was appropriate. And you could do that too. But first you have to get your stories onto paper.